Find a comfy seat. We have extra cushions and stuff over here, so if you need support or extra props, feel free to grab them. Beginning by finding a position that feels supportive for our bodies. You might be sitting in a chair or on the cushion, allowing the spine to be upright but not rigid. The body being at ease but still awake. And taking a moment to arrive here, not needing to be anywhere else, not needing anything to be different. Just allowing yourself to land, settle, and taking a moment to just be. There's no goal in this practice. There's nothing to achieve. This is just an invitation to be with what's here. The meditation will begin and end at the sound of the bell. Start with just taking a deep breath. This might be your first conscious deep breath of the day, in through the nose and out. Feeling what that does to our bodies, our nervous systems. You might begin by noticing the natural rhythm of the breath. No need to change it or control it. Just feeling the body breathing. Perhaps noticing where the breath is most clear for you. It might be the rise and fall of the chest, the lungs expanding, maybe the movement of our bellies, or the sensation of the air at the bottom of our nose. Just allowing the body to settle in its own way. Doing a brief body scan as we move from the top of the head, easing tension here, relaxing the brows, our eyes, unclenching the jaw, removing the tongue from the roof of your mouth, finding that ease as it travels down your neck and shoulders, letting your chest soften as you feel it expand and contract with each breath. Down the arms and your hands, letting the belly soften as we breathe deep, moving down into the hips, the legs, the feet. With each breath, just feeling an increased layer of ease being brought to the body. And as you settle, you might notice the mind beginning to slow down. Or maybe not. Either way, we're just letting that be okay. There's no requirement in our practice for the mind to be still. Just gently arriving again and again with the breath as our anchor. And as we sit here, we might begin to notice the different ways we relate to this moment. Sometimes there can be a subtle leaning forward, maybe wanting something to happen, wanting the mind to be quiet, wanting the practice to feel a certain way, a kind of striving. And other times there might be a pulling back, a drifting, a dullness, maybe a sense of checking out or losing interest. Neither of these are wrong. They're natural movements of the mind. And in this practice, we're not trying to get rid of them. Instead, we're beginning to notice them, to recognize when the mind is pushing, when it's pulling away. And ever so gently, without force, we begin to explore what it feels like to come back to the middle. Not striving, not retreating, just being here. Letting the breath be a place to return to when the mind gets busy. It can be a steady point of contact for you in the present moment. Not striving, not repeating, just being here. And as you continue, you might begin to notice more clearly when effort starts to take shape. Perhaps there's a moment when you realize you're trying to hold on to the breath too tightly, trying to stay focused, trying to do it just right. If I can meditate just right. And if that's here for you, see if you can soften just a little. Let the breath come to you rather than reaching for it. Or maybe you notice the opposite, a drifting. Is the mind wandering far away? A sense of losing the thread of attention. And here too, there's no need for judgment. Just gently re-engaging. Coming back to the present, not with force, but with care. This is the practice. Not staying perfectly present, but noticing when we've moved away and returning. You might begin to sense that there's a kind of effort here that is steady. Steady but not strained. Engaged but not pushing. Like we're holding something gently. Not gripping it too tightly. Not letting it fall. But simply staying in relationship with it. And as thoughts arise, as sensations come and go, allowing them to be there. Not needing to push them away, but also not needing to follow them. Just continuing to return again and again with a light, steady touch. And now allowing for a few minutes of silent practice, continuing in this way, resting with the breath, noticing when the mind leans or pulls away, and gently returning to the center. Nothing to force, nothing to fix. The meditation will end at the sound of the bell. And as we gently return to the room, beginning to bring a bit more awareness back into the body and the space around you. And just taking a moment to reflect on this quality of being present without pushing or pulling, but instead this balanced way of relating. And this is something we can begin to carry with us, not just in meditation, but into this evening and how we move in our lives. So tonight we're beginning a new series on what we're calling the art of wise effort. And there's a lot of reasons this feels important, but we wanted to explore it because I feel like many of us come to practice carrying some habits and patterns that shape us outside of practice. We've been conditioned over many years in our lives to relate effort to productivity, achievement, or output. And there's a sense that if something matters, we should try harder, push more, be more disciplined, more efficient. And that can be useful in certain areas of our lives, but it can also come with a cost. And for many of us, I feel like that pressure is familiar. We've done a couple of series that touches on this topic a little bit, the burnout series, or some of this came up in the interpersonal dialogue series. But it's the same energy that can lead to burnout in other areas of our lives. And the sense is that if we just try a little harder or focus a little more, push a little further, then maybe things will settle. But what we begin to see is that this kind of striving doesn't actually lead to ease. It often leads to more tension, more frustration, and a subtle sense of failure when things don't go the way we think they should. It's just a subtle sense of failure, not a full encompassing. And so this teaching on wise effort is a different kind of relationship. It's not one that's based in pushing or collapsing, but one that's rooted in balance and in learning how to engage with our experience in a way that is steady and sustainable and kind. As Tricia Hersey reminds us, Tricia Hersey is the founder of the NAP ministry. She said, "You don't have to burn yourself out to be of service." That applies not just to our work in the world, but to our inner life as well. And so today we're going to explore wise effort as part of the path, right? The 4 great efforts, which the Buddha talks about, sort of breaks it down surprisingly into a list, and then moving beyond productivity mindset. So in the Buddha's teachings, wise effort, I'll probably butcher the Pali, but I'll attempt, what's called samavayama, cool, is one part of the Noble Eightfold Path. And that's important because it reminds us that effort isn't separate from wisdom or care. It's not something we just sort of apply on top of everything else. It's sort of woven, and it's usually referred to as a braid. It's woven into how we understand and relate to our experience. And wise effort isn't about intensity. It's not about how hard we try or how disciplined we can be. It's about the quality and direction of our engagement. It asks us, what are we cultivating? Right? What am I putting all of this effort into? What's the purpose of it in the first place? What am I trying to cultivate from it? What are we reinforcing? Is all of that striving and need for productivity reinforcing positive things? Is it reinforcing patterns or habits that I feel obligated to uphold? And how are we meeting what's here? So how are we staying present in the midst of all of it? And so sometimes we hear the word effort and immediately think of willpower or control. But in this context, effort is much more relational. It's about remembering what matters, and sort of gently orienting ourselves towards that again and again. Makes me think of just now, like when you learn to ride your bike and you kind of are just like one direction to the next, like trying to find the way to just be in the center of the sidewalk and not all over the dang place. And this applies to practice and how we move through life. As Buddhist teacher Sharon Salzberg puts it, the most important thing is remembering the most important thing. And so the practice isn't to force ourselves in a particular state. It's just to keep remembering, to come back, to reconnect, to reorient. And even when the mind wanders, even when things feel messy or unclear, the effort is simply in returning. And there's a steadiness to that, a kind of quiet consistency that doesn't rely on pushing. There's this saying, you cannot make someone love you by loving them harder. And when I first heard that, I was like, you can't? Because I can, yeah, exactly. Because I'd try. A life of people pleasing. I've always thought that if I just tried harder in every area of my life, I would succeed in garnering people's love, their acceptance, my own acceptance of myself, because I gave it my all. I went above and beyond for everything. And I feel like for me, the last 5 years have been like a slow unraveling of that mindset, sort of shifting how I think and how I approach life. And that softer approach has allowed something to unfold in a way that the forcing never could. It's given me space. It's given me perspective. It's given me an understanding of what it means to be who I authentically am, and not with that external expectation or, the level of perfectionism that I held in my mind. And it's not perfect, and it's certainly not over, this unraveling. But it is a reminder to return to the path again and again, because I know how hard it was doing it the other way. And so don't worry. Dharma to the rescue, as always. The Buddha described wise effort through what is known as the 4 great efforts. And these 4 great efforts talk about unwholesome and wholesome states, which, as a reminder, are things that either lead to suffering, unwholesome, or what lead us out of suffering, wholesome. And to be honest, that all sounds really exhausting and like a lot of effort. But they give us really practical ways to understand how effort functions in our life. So the first effort is how to prevent unwholesome states from arising. Piece of cake. Just don't think of anything that brings you suffering. No big deal. The second is to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen.
Wait, what was the first one?
Yeah. I'll go through them all.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll come back. The third is to cultivate wholesome states. And the fourth is to maintain those wholesome states once they're here. So the first, an attempt to prevent unwholesome things from arising. If they've already arisen, though, step 2, let them go. Abandon ship. The third, try to replace them with wholesome states. And fourth, maintain them once they're there. So sort of like, yeah.
So simple.
As the Buddha does. And it's just like makes me think of like the pathways, right, that we reinforce in our minds over and over again. It's like trying to recreate those pathways. Mine is like a dirt path, and I'm trying to make it pretty with flowers. Let's like bring something else to that path. And so, sorry for all the rule followers out there. This is not a hard and fast rule adoption. It's not an easy thing to just check, unwholesome, gone, wholesome, here. It might be helpful to hear that this isn't a rigid or moral framework, but it's something like tending to a garden. We begin to notice what conditions lead to certain mind states, what environments habits or patterns tend to give rise to stress, reactivity, or disconnection. And we also begin to notice through this practice what supports clarity and ease and presence. So effort in this sense becomes about care, about paying attention to what we're feeding, because what we feed tends to grow. And in psychology, we might say that what we reinforce gets stronger over time. Mariam Kaba, who's an American organizer, educator, and curator known for her leadership in prison industrial complex abolition and transformative justice movements, she says, hope is a discipline. And I feel that. And in a similar way, we might say that presence is a discipline, right? It's a discipline of this practice. The returning again and again is a discipline. And not in like a rigid or pushing sense, like do it better, do it more, but in a sense of something we return to, something that we continue to nurture over time. And there are certainly patterns that get reinforced in my life simply because they're familiar. And it could be anything. Like I lock my car twice every time I leave it. Once because you have to lock it. The second is because did I forget to lock it the first time? It's very inconsequential to my life. Like locking my car twice does not impact the quality of my life. But then there are other patterns of me, like coming home from work and completely wanting to like melt into nothingness, decompress mode. And sure, I know that I deserve rest, but also the pattern of resting has built this like consistency of, you know, that meme, like treat yourself. It's like, okay, yeah, every day. And treating myself in that way, for me, can fuel depression and like a complete disassociation from self. It's what I will tend to go to, especially when I feel quite overstimulated from my environment. Like I work in person 5 days a week. I used to work from home 4 days a week. So I am overstimulated being around people that much. And so when I come home, sometimes it's just like everything gone, turning inward, but not a turning inward with like any sort of reflection or intention, but a numbingness. And so that pattern, right, is not serving my life in ways that I would like it to. And so bringing attention to something different, interrupting a habitual reaction, choosing to pause, it can begin to change the direction of things, of our patterns. And so now I have a brick on my phone, if no one's heard of that app. It means I can't access certain things on my phone. So essentially when I come home, my phone is not usable, lame, for like an hour. And so for that hour, I do other things other than disassociating and melting into a pool. I cook dinner. I move my body because it works. I read a book. I do other things other than disassociating. And that makes me feel good. And that small shift allows me to find balance in my life, because it doesn't mean I'm not resting. Because if you know me and if you've been to this group, I am in bed as often as I can be. Okay? But there are other parts of my life other than bed, unfortunately. And so one of the biggest challenges in working with effort is that many of us have been conditioned to equate effort with productivity. If there's effort, something has to be produced from it, right? We measure it with output, we measure the results, and there's often an underlying belief that if we're not achieving something, then we're not doing good enough. And I see it so much these days, like all over social media, where like someone's hobby now becomes commodified. Like if you're good at something, then you should probably be making money off of it. And not saying that that's a bad thing, but what is wrong with just learning something new? What's wrong with just spending time with yourself, for yourself, why isn't that enough? And I feel like that mindset can easily make its way into our meditation practice. We can start evaluating, was it good? Was I focused enough? Did I stay present the whole time? I was literally just having a conversation with a coworker today who was like, I'm trying so hard right now to just sit and then to have everything leave my mind. And I was like, that's not the point. That's not the point. That's not what meditation is trying to do, is to remove everything. And then feel like a failure, right? When I didn't do it good enough or long enough. Makes you feel like we failed in some way. But wise effort invites a shift from that outcome-oriented way of thinking into relating to something that's much more process-oriented. It's less about what we achieve and more about how we show up. Less about getting somewhere and more about being in relationship with what's here. And from a psychology perspective, this connects to the difference between trying to control our experience and learning to regulate our relationship to it. Control often leads to tension. I don't know anything about that personally. I have a lot of tension and I try to control a lot. Regulation allows for responsiveness, for flexibility, for adjustment. I'm not a very go with the flow person, so this is definitely a practice I need to be leaning into. And this is where sustainability comes in, because if our effort is driven by pressure and self-judgment, it can be very hard to maintain. Like, do any of us do our best work through judgment and pressure? It leads to cycles of overexertion and collapse. But when effort is rooted in care and understanding, it becomes easier to stay with it. So again, as Tricia Hersey said, you don't have to burn yourself out to be of service to yourself or others. Rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And that applies not just to our work, but to our inner life as well. Finding the balance in effort is not optional, it's essential. And so as we begin this series, we're starting with a reframe. That effort is not something we apply to force our experience into a particular shape. It's something we bring into how we relate to what's already there. It's the difference between striving and studying, between controlling and caring, between pushing or participating. And over these next few weeks, we'll begin to explore this more deeply, like how to recognize when effort becomes unbalanced, how to work with the conditions that shape our experience, and how to find ways of practicing that is both grounded and sustainable. For now, we might simply begin to notice, how am I relating to effort in my life? Where do I tend to push? Where do I tend to pull back? And what would it look like if I just met the moment with a little more balance? Thank you for your time.